Okay, we need to talk about Pictomancer. As you might have seen in the last couple of weeks, there had been some loud voices about Pictomancer breaking the meta and being way too strong for the competition, especially the caster roster. And while I believe it is partially true, there are some fine details to the story, especially when you have played one by yourself. So let me tell you, the difference is actually not relevant for most players. Only for a very small minority opting to grind for the first spots in speed rating or trying to make the best out of their passing clear groups for FFXIV's rankings. But let us start at the beginning. I was about to start into Savage on Party Finder right after the weekly reset, and of course that required me to think about which job I can realistically bring to the table, especially when I'm better at dealing solid damage than dealing with mechanics. So I thought about something useful for the party. However, a friend of mine playing the Dragoon tested some dummy rotations with me and we came to the conclusions that Summoner or Red Mage are a good step behind Dragoon on paper, and I tried out Pentamelding Machinist to at least have some more mitigation for Bloody Scratch and other raid-wide AoE mechanics, as well as bringing some clean and solid DPS to the table that is not hindered by movement or distance to the boss, in which ranged physicals naturally shine. And when we started our first tries, everything looked amazing. I even told the dancer to dance with me instead of my Dragoon friend, and that worked out nicely. After some tries and fails, our group fell apart, even though we came close to the third phase. But what did I find out? You can easily push Juice with a B tier job, especially in these scenarios. I was even outperforming most melees due to the bad uptime they could get on the first M1S boss. The funny thing though, when we looked for a party, I was forced to play a melee job, because only those 2 melee spots were open in a promising phase 3 proc group. So what happened? I cleared it with a Reaper, even though I missed easily 50% of my positionals and my finishing DPS was really not the best. Also, I didn't pentamelt my gear on maiming jobs. Which means it actually doesn't matter that much, as long as you bring something to the table that works for you and where you can at least perform the required minimum DPS with, you can play all jobs, and the DPS checks are really soft on this tier, at least compared to Endwalker tier 2 or tier 3. But now to the crispy part of the story. I just thought to myself, but what if I still want to push it further and play a job that doesn't have the melee burden of distance to the boss, nor falls into the technical Black Mage category? Yes, I power leveled my Pictomancer to 100 and tested it out on the dummy, which I've shown on my power test video, and ooh boy, the damage in a glare, and anytime there had been any form of AoE relevance in Fates or other content, Pictomancer is just insane. 2 or more targets, literally 7% of your rotation hits multiple targets, so no one beats Bob Ross in multi-canvas scenarios. However, the dummy rotation also blew me away with Black Mage-like self DPS, and then you still bring a buff to others to the table, which is on the level of a Summoner or Red Mage. I was actually a bit shocked. But then I went into normal Arcadian and the curtain fell. This actually is exactly on the same ballpark as my Machinist. I know, I might lack some practice, and to be fair, the Pictomancer rotation, at least using your painting abilities, is not as easy as some people might think. I guess it has a very low skill floor but decently high skill ceiling, because of how important and kinda difficult it is to build up your burst phases. Yes, movement and flexibility is very nice and on par with the Red Mage in my opinion, but the overall result when not running into highly optimized and perfectly aligned group DPS scenarios, it's not too much better. The real world performance of Pictomancer is just as good as the one of Machinist, at least for most players. However, I can definitely vibe more to Honeybee's song on the Machinist, and the failure rate of wiping is much less prevalent than on the Pictomancer. But even Summoner or Red Mage that I tested a second time with Pentamelded gear seem to perform very similarly. Like I said, it might differ on highly optimized scenarios, especially when you can end the fight on the big burst phase, which is the most powerful of all jobs on the Pictomancer. Come on, these high-end FF lock stats are all ending with the Pictomancer burst phase. There's no way this is during your usual casting sequence. And it also seems that Picto benefits heavily from Dancer and Bard support, because most speed kill records are in that constellation. But does it really matter for the common player in Party Finder? I really don't think so. Yet, there's one problem. The same kinda goes for Black Mage, and I believe as long as the gap between these two, on personal DPS at least, is as it is right now, there's technically no reason to prefer Black Mage, except you really love playing that job. So probably Pictomancer is actually kinda okay, but the other casters could use some buffs indeed. And if they're talking about buffs, please remember that man or woman with a machine gun. It just feels weird when jobs with raising potential and group damage buffs can come very close in DPS, even though I feel it is still in range of being perfectly okay. But sure, more to that in another video. Playstyle wise, I actually like and enjoy the Pictomancer. It plays and feels very well and is definitely unique and different to the other casters, especially with those long motive abilities, which are very complex in their use case and bring lots of fun to the table when being used outside of combat or in preparation inside of a transition phase. But especially on low levels, it wipes the floor with all other casters. They feel very simple in comparison, and Square did an awesome job to have the hammer motive and Mock of Ages so very early on in the game. And of course I absolutely love the dash, which I started to love on the White Mage already. But long story short, whatever those paper values show on FF logs or in raw numbers, it might actually not affect your overall experience in raids, even in Savage ones, or maybe even Ultimate, where the fights are even longer and highly optimized scenarios for one player in your party are likely not going to happen. Play the job you enjoy, buff the casters and ranged physicals, except the Pictomancer of course, and the balancing might be better than ever before. But most importantly, what do you think about the Pictomancer? Is it too strong, or do you agree that it's mostly fine and nicely designed? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and keep loving Final Fantasy.